in different areas, and people just living their lives, enjoying it. And we kind of take a lot of stuff for granted. And at least for me, I did a little podcast episode about this, just having that perspective. I think is truly important, so that we can decide, what does wealth mean to us? And it doesn't have to necessarily be money. Those kids growing up, they don't know anything from what they have. They just know that they're living and having a good time. They're playing in the streets, having fun with their friends. Yeah. So it could have been a childlike adolescence of them just running in the street, but parents and whoever else was out there was having a good time too. All right, guys, what's going on to another episode of the More Than a Side Hustle podcast, where we help 9-to-5ers create more impact, income, and influence outside their jobs. My name is Anthony.
And I am Janoka. Happy to be back. Feel like we haven't been on screen officially for a little bit. The last few podcasts, things that we've done before and stuff like that. So happy to settle in. But there's a reason we've been on the go.
Yeah, we've been traveling. If you guys don't know, we are world-renowned travelers. And we just came back from Africa. So this episode is going to be more revolved around what we've learned. If you've never visited our experience in Africa, we'll give you some fun facts, things we learned. But then also, we ran our business completely remote for about almost 2 weeks.
Yes.
So you're going to learn a little bit about how we did that, a little bit of structure around that. So it's going to be a little bit of education, but also a little bit of background.
I'm like, and the structure, lack of structure, whatever that looked like. So once again, thank you for joining us. If you are watching us on YouTube, make sure you're subscribing and liking and sharing with others what we're talking about and doing. So we went to South Africa for my 35th birthday, to celebrate my 35th birthday. And we were traveling like crazy because prior to that, Anthony was in New Orleans for a wedding. Literally came back December 2nd. We flew out December 3rd to Africa with our baby girl, Alani. So we flew to Africa. I mean, let's talk about flying there, first of all.
Okay.
With a baby. So let me retract. One time in our travel life, we were heading to Morocco and we were checking in and they offered an upgrade to like a lie flat bed, each person like $500. So every time we travel internationally, I'm like, we can just ask at the counter what they have available for upgrades.
Is that a hack?
And go from there.
Like, how would someone get that upgrade for $500?
That was ridiculous. Like, the flight was from New York to London, so that's a long flight for just $500. I don't know that I've ever seen that again, especially with the inflation prices. Maybe it's a hack, but the thing is, they want to sell the seat. At this point, no one has bought the seat, so they're like, we'll sell it at a way cheaper rate than we originally would. So that is my goal usually when we're traveling. And for this specific flight, because Alani is under 2, we were going to hold her in our laps we had to fly 2 hours to Atlanta and then 15 hours from Atlanta to South Africa.
So the traveling hack is if you are a person who buys a flight ticket and you get to the gate early.
Gate, or even when you're giving your luggage.
Or even when you're giving your luggage. Here's a travel hack. You go to the front gate and you ask them if there's any available upgrades.
Right.
And if they are, they may upgrade
tell
you
what the options are
to the lie flat. Because like you said, if the seats are available,
it ain't free.
No one's taking it. You might be able to get a $4,000 seat for $500.
Maybe. We did not get that.
we didn't get that. We just give you the hack.
We didn't get that because Delta told me they don't do upgrades there. Like, you got to call it in, whatever. We don't generally fly Delta regularly, so.
No beef to Delta either. I know a lot of people
that's
like
what they
Delta.
just said.
I enjoy Delta probably more than the other airlines, too, so maybe we need to show them some more love.
Okay, no one's not showing them love. I'm just telling you, because Delta's hub is not in Dallas. Their hub is in Atlanta.
We get more options on American Airlines in Dallas.
We
also probably get more options for Southwest if you really want to take it there.
Okay, what's the beef? I don't understand. You have a thing with the flight airlines.
I'm just saying, there's
other options.
I'm saying there's other options, so I really enjoy Delta. So maybe that becomes our home. So if you know any Delta plugs, shout them out, show them the podcast, show them our stuff, and maybe we get some shaking.
Access.
2024.
Love that for us. So the hack didn't work. And I was
after all of that,
calling them to see if there's a way to upgrade, but because we got his ticket through points, it was kind of like not working out. I'm like, all right, we flew to Atlanta. Now is the long leg. I'm like, let me go and ask, do you have any open seats at this point that would allow all 3 of us to be together? Because we were just going to be like 2 of us in like the 3 row holding a 21-month-old. if you have a child or been around a toddler, that was not a good plan. But we wasn't trying to pay. So I asked her, she had any availability for us to all three sit in the together. She was like, okay, I'll put you guys two at the end, and the middle seat is actually empty. I'm like, okay, perfect. God sent.
So that's another hack.
Just ask. Okay, just ask. We used to do that with the car seat, same type of thing. When we had Alani traveling in a car seat, just asking if they have any available things to bring it on, and she can be locked up in there.
So if you want to, so what's the hack around that? So you get to the asking again. So if there's any available seats, if you are in the middle seat or you got the aisle or you don't want to sit next to nobody, when you show up to the gate, ask if there's any available seats so that they can move you. And if you got a nice clerk or attendant, they'll move you. And if
Closed
not,
mouths don't get fed.
not, they'll just say it's for full flight.
Now that I think about it, that same thing happened when we went to Europe. We flew directly from Dallas to Madrid, and the same thing, but it was with the car seat. I was like, do you have any available seats that I can bring the car seat on? And they did. And so we didn't have to hold her for the whole 9-hour flight. So anyway, for Africa, 15 hours, she sat in her own seats, and, well, she slept about 10 of it. And that was the commute. So this was the longest commute that we've ever made. So obviously the longest for her as well.
And we booked my entire flight on points. Oh, that's super dope.
Yes.
You need to do an episode on credit card hacking. Like trying to give the people some information, some game here.
Okay.
So what's the game?
I transferred the Amex points to our Delta, to your Delta status, and used that to buy the flight. Because you can transfer points.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's another hack. How about that?
Okay, are you keeping track of the hacks? Are you writing it down?
These are important for people to know.
Yeah,
I didn't know that you could transfer points. So we use our Amex Platinum card for a lot of our expenses. So the points kind of accumulate pretty quickly. So at that point, if you get a quote unquote, and I'm not one of those people that believe in those points because especially if you are in extreme debt and your goal is to get the most amount of points, you're kind of hustling backwards at that point. So, but if you're in a good place and you're like, hey, I'm going to use my cards to just accumulate these points. And then, at the end of the year, if you get a free flight to Africa, by all means.
That was my goal all this time. Throughout the year, I knew we would use the points towards that.
How long have you been planning this trip? Because somebody asked me and I wasn't really sure.
This is a funny thing to note, too. Tony doesn't know ever what's happening when it comes to vacationing. Traveling.
No.
At all. He shows up. He gets the list of what he needs to wear, of like dressy versus casual, and shows up. Doesn't know the hotel, doesn't know the flight arrangement, nothing.
Who can relate to that? If y'all listen to this episode, let me know if y'all can relate to that.
He finds out when I'm sending the text to my parents to let them know where we'll be.
I only know the itinerary based on the outfit, so let me know if y'all can relate to that in the YouTube comments. Because I'm not the person that's going to travel. I'm not the person that's going to plan a big travel. So if you're like, hey, this is where we going, you show me how to show up, and I'm there.
When did I decide that I wanted to go there? Maybe around like August, maybe summertime. I'm like, oh, we should go to South Africa. I was saying it and then officially put it into motion. And I had one of our friends actually helped us to plan it. Her name is Tori at the 29th. Actually, I can tag her below in the comments. She's planned like our last 6 or 7 trips, to be honest. So that has been a great help with her
Tori Elizabeth Phillip.
Yeah, but the 29th is what she's going by.
Yeah, the 29th. We'll put it in the comments like you said.
So, wait, before you asked me about how long I started planning it, I don't remember where I was going with it. Anyway, it was our longest flight. I would say that it wasn't too bad. Food wasn't the best, but it is what it is. So after we got off the flight, we're like, so which one do we prefer? Because at first when we were discussing with someone on the phone for Delta, they were going to upgrade us to the seats where it was just 2 versus 3. So it would have been just 2 of us, but we were holding her versus what we got where she got her own seat. And I'm like, her own seat, absolutely, I would say.
Yeah.
Her own seat, absolutely.
Because she gets to sit down, do her own thing, move around. She got to sleep on the seat.
Yeah, for 10 hours. That was the best part of it.
So I would definitely recommend that if you could get that free seat.
The next time we travel, she'll be 2, so this is no longer a discussion. So we have to pay for her seats moving forward. So that's that. So that was that. And then we arrived there. So from where we are in Dallas, it's an 8-hour time difference, with South Africa being ahead. So we were trying to really follow their, so if it's daytime there, we landed, I think 4 p.m., trying to stay up and not go to bed till like 11, 12, with hopes that would help us when we arrived. And the first thing I noticed when we got to South Africa, I would say, the first thing I realized with, generally, I think throughout my life when I heard of South Africa, you generally hear that a lot of white people are in South Africa. Really, that's what they
'Cause
say.
it's gentrified.
Because it's like a gentrified part of Africa. And so when we landed, I was shocked that I didn't see any at all.
Not the whole trip.
So obviously, I'm not saying there isn't any, but I guess expected more based off of what I've always heard.
But it also could have been, yeah, because we weren't in the areas where we were in the areas where you would expect to see white people at.
Yeah. But I'm just even speaking about first landing. In the airport, you see everyone.
Yeah.
So I was just even speaking about first landing. That was the case. That was the first thing that I recognized. We got to our hotel, checked in. That was good. And we just tried to stay up to beat the time. Because they're like, we want to go with the day. We want to.
That time kicked our ass the whole trip.
Yours more than everyone.
Yeah, that time kicked my ass the whole trip. I was up at 5, 3, 4, 5.
The first night, I think we went down about 11. We all got up at 3. It was like a big kiki. We were at 3:30 to like 5:30, 2 hours. We're up. And then me and Lonnie finally went back down. But Maniac McGee over here hit the gym.
Yeah.
He just was on it. He's like, I can't go back to sleep. So the first day we did a tour, went out there and really heard about, our first stop, I should say, was Johannesburg. Sorry, we went to Johannesburg and Cape Town. Our first stop was that, Johannesburg, and we did a full tour the first day, like really jump right in at like 10 a.m. they was picking us up.
Yeah, which is ridiculous.
It was ridiculous, but the hope was to adjust to the time quickly. Immediately, we recognized that South Africa is Nelson Mandela town. Now, some of you may be like, duh, like, I know that. Okay, yeah, you're aware, but I don't think you're aware as much as, like, the way they talk about it and praise him. Rightfully so. I'm not saying rightfully so, but as soon as we went on a tour, because most of our tour was, like, private tours, we're seeing where he lived. We're seeing where he stayed for 9 days. Our hotel, actually, that we stayed in, he wrote, what was the name of the book? He wrote his book. Freedom. Okay, I see you, brother. He wrote his book there.
So I was talking to my barber about this, too. Like, we learned about Nelson Mandela in the United States from a textbook perspective, and we understand the context around it.
Right.
But them living through it is like their version, South Africa's version of like Martin Luther King. So
But more recently, too.
Yeah, so he has the boulevards, he has the buildings, he has the statues, he has the schools, he has the
everything,
he has the bridges. So
towns.
I don't think we really I don't think I personally understood the full effect of what he's accomplished and what he's done and his impact until we actually visited and learned about him while we were there. And we'll kind of get into a little bit of what we experienced as well around that. But Nelson Mandela is
he's the man.
King.
He's the man. Yeah, there's no, and like I said, rightfully so. But I feel, and that was a question that we had with each other. Like, do you remember learning about Nelson Mandela? Like, in what capacity? Right?
I think for me, one of the things that made me recognize, like, the movements today are no comparison to the movements back in those days.
Yeah.
So in the 90s, and they had the Free Mandela shirts. We have the Free Meek Mill shirts. and Meek Mill just got a law passed, right? So he went through some things, and he was able to change. Maybe he's not the best example. Today, he's not the best example. Back then, it was like, all right, he was on probation for doing things he shouldn't have been doing. But when you got when you see the free Nelson Mandela shirts, and you got the free your person that you went to school with or that robbed the store, you got the free shirts, and you're like, yo, you're kind of comparing the two. But his impact was so profound. It was like, there is no comparison to the free movement, because the world wanted him free. Literally, the whole entire world
they demanded
rooted and demanded for his freedom. So when you see those free shirts, it's kind of like, oh, okay, that's where people are really that's really where it came from, essentially. And it's like, it's not the same.
It's definitely not the same, but you just triggered for me where we remembered that when I said they demanded it, I guess more so now, obviously back then when things are differently, like Johannesburg and I feel like South Africa, the people of the cities kind of stand on what they want and the government follows, which is very weird compared to obviously here in America, we complain and say we want, the government don't do that. It's just like they would tell us like, oh, the government wanted to make this building this, but the people of the city said, no, they wanted to keep it this way and they didn't do it. I'm like, really? Because my government would have knocked this building down and built what they wanted to build. So I'm shocked at that. So there was a few different instances where it was like, okay, like I guess maybe after the turn of Nelson Mandela and stuff like that, they started listening more to their people. Now, I'm not going to get into their government and politics. I don't know all those logistics, but there were some instances, and I'm like, wow, I don't think that's something that we would do at home in the States, as they say.
So for an example, there was an area where it was like it was free housing.
Oh, yeah.
But the free housing was so overrun and thrown that the government said that they wouldn't even touch it. So, but they're building buildings and houses around it. So in our mind, in the United States, like, yo, they would have just plowed the free housing down, which absolutely looked like a dump, and just continued to build the houses. But they said, well, the people didn't want us to plow the land, so we kind of left it and we started building houses around it. So that's kind of like that example of that.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, how nice. Like, that's just
when they want to knock
people's
down,
like, we ain't doing that, and they ain't do it.
Gentrify area, they're gonna do it here, but they're not touching it.
Yeah. So we got to our hotel, went on that tour. That was, and we also in Johannesburg went to a place called Soweto, which is pretty popular in Johannesburg. You probably never heard of it here, but that's where we saw kind of
Soweto.
What does it stand for? Southern Western Township.
There you go.
And so that's where they would call, maybe, if you will, their ghetto or their not as prestigious places. So when you first get into the town, there is some nice homes that we were able to see. But further in, it was literally like the sheds that Anthony was describing, where there's no electricity, no running water, but everybody's having a blast and doing their own thing. Like you see somebody on the side sewing, and you see somebody on the side, he's doing recycling, and it's always so interesting to see the things that the lack of things people have, and they're still able to enjoy life and move on. Now, obviously, I'm not saying someone that's going to be like, well, duh, obviously there's other people in the world, and even in America, that doesn't have everything we have. Understood. But to see it firsthand while driving and just be that up close with it just is a reminder, because we don't always think about that. Yeah. So it's just a really close reminder of all the things we have, and maybe you don't even need, but
yeah, when we was driving through those areas, I definitely had a lot of self-reflection. So to give you guys some context, these are homes that are the size of probably a bedroom. So the room we're recording in is probably the size of a house. Mm-hmm. A full house with a full family living in, and we have a roof over our heads, but their roofs are made of aluminum foil, tin, and metal. Like,
maybe we can put a video in here to this, because we took some videos.
And we got some videos, and we'll share those. And then we was like, what happens if it rains? And it's like, they deal with it. There's like, they don't have no electricity, no running water. And as we're driving through, I was literally on Twitter kind of catching up for the day, and we're talking about $100,000 is minimum wage now, and you got to have a $200 date, and we're having all these debates and arguments. It's like we were literally driving through the hoods, and people were having fun. They were playing dominoes. They were running in the street. They were not walking their dogs. The dogs are walking themselves.
That's an American thing, where you keep the dogs in the house.
But it was truly a point of reflection when I'm sitting.
The goat were around, actually.
A lot of goats. To give you guys another point of view from those common areas, were that the garbage pickup is once a year.
It's supposed to be once a year for that.
And that's
year.
Maybe if the garbage, whatever they decide to do. So it might be once a year.
Like. Yeah.
So the garbage is piled up in different areas, and people just living their lives, enjoying it. And we kind of take a lot of stuff for granted. And at least for me, I know I did a little podcast episode about this, just having that perspective. I think is truly important, so that we could decide, what does wealth mean to us? And it doesn't have to necessarily mean money. Yeah. Those kids growing up, they don't know anything from what they have. They just know that they're living, they're having a good time, they're playing in the streets, having fun with their friends.
They go to school, maybe not, and then keep moving.
Yeah, so it could have been a childlike adolescence of them just running in the street, but parents and whoever else was out there was having a good time too.
And I just remembered another way that the government or whatever kind of helps Black people is they have something called Black empowerment. And they said, our driver was telling us all this information, is to put Black people in middle class. So, for example, they say if there is a business, like if you're putting, let's say LLC, you're putting an LLC request in, the government would generally pick the Black business over the white business due to Black empowerment, due to this program that they have to help Black people become more middle class citizens. So I just thought that was amazing. But something that he did go on to say was that the poverty in South Africa is really high. It's at 55%. It made me think, well, what's the poverty in America? I have no idea. And then their employment is at 30%. 30% people working or not working? Not working. I think 30% of people not working. And that's another big issue that they're facing there too. So, of course, there's positive things, there's things happening, but they also have some issues. They also spoke about when they brought was it the World Cup or the Olympics there?
The Olympics.
The Olympics there, that kind of put them on the map. I don't remember what year that was, but that kind of put them on the map with tourists and people coming in, but they didn't see so much of a return for their business within the profits. They put all this money into it, but they didn't see a profit return. And we were kind of saying, well, it maybe got you some leads in that now people have eyes and people want to come. You maybe have not seen that return that year per se, but over time, maybe you guys will continue to see that return. So much so that this dome that they built is now vacant. They don't even use it, he said. He said sometimes they use like half of it. It's too big for anything else that they would use or too expensive. So it's kind of some ups and downs there. But that was what else? We went to Nelson Mandela's home. Like I said, the hotel we stayed in. Go ahead.
I was going to talk about just, was it the World Cup or the Olympics? I think it was the World Cup.
Sounds like the World Cup.
I think it was the World Cup. But usually this is like a big revenue driver. So you get a bunch of people, they come in, they visit millions of people, and it's supposed to generate more money for the economy.
Right.
But they spent so much money renovating
or building
that. Like
infrastructure.
They didn't have the infrastructure to host and maintain that building. It just kind of went. And we drove past it. It's like, that was where it was. It's like it looks like nothing. It's like it's absolutely nothing. So imagine what I thought about was I Am Legend.
What? Okay.
I thought about I Am Legend because
I don't remember exactly everything from the movie. So go ahead.
Like a desolate part of a thriving something that you
community.
When you think about something as big as that, like a stadium, you would think that there would be a lot of like around it.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely nothing. It's kind of bare. So that kind of lets you know that they spent so much money on renovating. They try to rebuild the bus systems. They try to do all of that in time. And now the bus systems aren't even being used.
Well, the train systems, he said that because of COVID, you know how we speak about how certain cities in America got up and running. Let's talk about the Texas and the Atlantas, and then certain cities kind of stay desolate. But in other parts of the world, COVID really like shut them down where they weren't doing anything at all.
Because we still had the trains. We were just on
we was at brunch. Like, let's be clear.
Texas was at brunch.
So them being completely shut down, people started stealing the steel from the copper from the trains, and so they still haven't been able to get the trains back up and running yet because of all the copper that was stolen.
The copper is very expensive to replace.
So
we know because they stole it from one of our properties.
Yeah, they are progressing, but then there's stuff that not so much, right? But it feels just like a regular city, right? Would you say it feels like a city?
Yeah. I mean, just when.
Like a city.
Like they had some of the bus stops or train stops there, and we were kind of asking questions about does a train run? It's like, no, it's just. So imagine you built a train station that's just empty, it's just vacant, just sitting in the middle of the street. I can't imagine it. So now it's kind of taking up street room, it's taking up parking. You got to walk around, and it's just kind of like an eyesore.
Yeah.
And so those are some things you've seen and we saw in the city, but.
And then we went to some restaurants. They were booming, just like how you would see it here, diverse.
Yeah, one of my biggest takeaways while we was out there was that it was so refreshing to see everywhere we went had black people.
Yeah.
Now we might have a white audience on the podcast listening and stuff like that. No shade to you guys, but it's very rare where we go somewhere and there is just people that look like us, right? Outside of Atlanta, but
especially Texas.
Not in Texas. So we're talking about the managers. We're talking about the staff. We're talking about everyone in there eating and dining. All the restaurants had black people in them. Mm-hmm. So you walk in and it's normal. And it took me I thought it was going to feel weird for some reason. Like you walk into a restaurant, it's just nothing but black people because you're not used to it. Mm-hmm. And it's not a black brunch. It's not come through on Saturday. We're going to have brunch and bottles and everybody's black. No, this is just what it is on a Tuesday night, a Wednesday night, a Thursday night. But questions I was asking it was kind of sad. I was asking questions about these restaurants and everything. It was like, yeah, they're owned by black people. I was asking about companies. Oh, yeah, white people. I was asking about these companies. Oh, yeah, everyone that works there is black, from the managers to everyone, but it's owned by white people.
That's how some restaurants are here.
Yeah, so you think that we're progressing because that's all you see, but the biggest challenge is for us is still the lack of capital and ownership. They was like, we could get to the top of these companies, but we don't have the capital to open the businesses, to own the businesses, to own the restaurants, to own the touring companies, and this, that, and the third. So that was still a little bit disheartening to see so many black people, but the ownership levels were still extremely low.
And some other stats I have here.
Going back to your stats, what do you think about that? Some other stats I have here.
It was good stats.
Oh, in regards to what I was saying, you're skipping topics.
Yes, no, it was good because we see.
What's the transition? Like, you've been doing this podcast long enough to feel like there should be
the
a transition. I just went and gave y'all my emotions, and she's like, some other stats we have here.
No, the reason why it was important is because I'm seeing here where we speak about that ownership, and when I spoke about being surprised of not having that many white people, I was going to say how many white people there actually is.
Oh, there you go. In regards to the ownership and the white people here, white people, we ain't throwing no shade to the white people.
In regards to it, the number that he gave us, he said there's actually 6 million black people and 2 million white people in South Africa. So that's why we probably didn't see as much. However, it probably is more there than the other African countries. That's probably what it is in comparison to.
Yeah.
Essentially. Some other things that was said that I found to be different from us. We use that terminology of biracial generally when someone is parent, the mother is white, father is black, mother is black, father, or vice versa. We use the word biracial. They use the word colored, which I'm like, for us, if we hear colored here, that's very
seems derogatory.
Interrogative. Like, what year are we in? But for them, that's like their standard. And he went on to say that a lot of them, black can mean anybody but white. And we're like, huh? It's kind of shocking to hear that in an African country, right? Because, I mean, essentially it just seems kind of backwards to hear that, if you will, that's how they describe it. And that's where he brought up the point of I think, Trevor Noah, saying like he was very careful not to use the word colored when he came to America because he was cognizant of it. But then I recently remember, like on Twitter, I saw people giving backlash to the girl Twyla. She sings the song Water. If you don't know it, you can Google it. She's from South Africa. And she described herself as colored. And now it makes sense, obviously. But in the moment, I'm like, that sounds weird, but that's their standard. So that's something else that we learned while we were there. But a lot more knowledge, essentially, knowledge in Johannesburg, but I'm trying to see if there's anything else that we missed before we move on to our safari experience. The elephant sanctuary. So that was the other thing. Like I said, we had Alani with us. Elephants is her favorite animal, so we made sure we went to an elephant sanctuary, and that experience was amazing. At first, I was scared. I'm like, okay, what are we gonna like? How close are we getting to this animal? How much are we gonna do? What is it gonna look like? But our guide was very informative. It was controlling. We were able to kind of touch the animal, feed the animal, like touch its foot, under its belly, have it walk with us. All of these things we were able to do with the elephant, and she wasn't scared at all, which was, I mean, we're adults, so we're aware of how big this animal is. But that was one of my favorite parts of the trip, the elephant sanctuary.
Yeah, Elephant Sanctuary was absolutely dope. Outside of the fun facts and all of that stuff, you get that stuff in a tour in a zoo. But this type of stuff is like the elephants are literally walking alongside us. Mm-hmm. You can't get that in a zoo. You could feed them, you might be able to touch them, but we were not. No, you could feed elephants in a zoo.
Okay.
Yeah, but not the way we were feeding them.
I'm about to say, you felt you did that before?
Nah, that's not my thing.
Okay.
But we were literally walking us alongside the elephants while, they were doing their tours and things like that. So was that my favorite part? Nah, because I got my sneakers dirty. But aside from that, it was good.
What the hell? Moving on to, we did a safari. Mm-hmm. And so a safari is... So, okay, we had to drive from Johannesburg about 3 hours out to go to the safari. Almost all the safaris are not close to the city. Even if you go in Cape Town, it's a drive out. Then you get to a gate where you then have to drive like an hour in to get to your lodge. I don't think I fully grasped when I booked the safari what it entailed. And at that moment, I'm like, should we be doing this? So... You've seen safaris before in that you're in a a truck, if you will, and it's open on the side and
a
you have a
cage.
cover.
Yep.
Right? But I've also seen safaris where you're enclosed, where you can roll down a window or something like that. This one didn't necessarily have that. There was no rolling down the window. You were just in it. You were along. He's like, it's an hour drive to the lodge. We're like, okay. You are literally driving through the jungle. Okay? Once again, you may be like, oh, that's what I thought it would be. No. I don't think you really feel it until you're there. You're like, okay. It's me, my husband, and my little daughter in the middle. No seat belts. He's like, okay, now we're in the jungle, okay, for another 35, 40 minutes. Mm-hmm. What?
This was 36,000 acres of land.
Oh, God.
36,000 acres of just land. And I'm saying that because I want you guys to get some perspective. So if you have a house and your house is on a half an acre, you kind of doing it big. You kind of doing it mid-size. You're doing and if your house is on 1 acre of land, you're doing something pretty decent. This is 36,000 acres of land. And we're not talking about just empty land. Trees, rhinoceros, excuse me. We saw rhinoceroses or rhinos.
Say rhinos.
Because that's a word you never say because you never see them dudes.
Okay. Yep, rhinos, there's elephants, there's leopards, there's lions, there's zebras, there's animals.
They said they have over 50 species of animals.
Animals I've never seen before. There's Timon and Pumbaa. Yep. You know those animals, whatever their names are. There. They are there.
So we pretty much saw every animal that you could think about in Lion King.
And you're driving through this bumpy... This is how the road is going if you can't see me on YouTube. I look crazy, but you're driving through... this dusty, bumpy lack of a road, saying to yourself, like, what is this? What did I get myself into? He's like, did you not know what you signed up for? I'm like, no.
It was ridiculous.
I'm literally like, no, I don't know what I signed up for. And we go to the lodge, and they do, generally with the lodges, they call it a game drive. So when you're going out, you get to your hotel, if you will, and you're actually going out to seek and look for animals, they call it games. You're going on a game or you're going on a game drive. And they usually leave really early in the morning, like 5:30 in the morning, or they'll leave at 4 or 5 o'clock at night, and you're on the game drive for 3 to 4 hours. Like, that's included with your stay. So I already knew that we needed a private one because of Alani. They didn't allow babies on the game drive. Some lodges didn't even allow kids at all, or you had to be 6 and older, whatever. So we would have to get a private one, they said, or do like a Bumble, which is specifically for the kids, whatever. And, so we did a Bumble drive, basically, where we're like, all right, we'll go out and see the animals, but we don't need to see the animals multiple times. Because they kept asking us, are you only going to go once? We stayed for like 2 nights, and we're like, yeah, once is more than enough.
So with that, it was the safari was a really, really good trip. We wrapped that up, and then one of the things, what?
Yeah, nothing else to add to safari?
No.
Okay.
I mean, you kind of did everything for that.
Okay.
It was a good trip. We saw the animals. People had a good time. Lonnie had a good time. We had a elephant come up to our pool and drink out the water while we were standing there watching it. Mm-hmm. It was a really good experience.
I don't know if I'll do it again, but
why not?
Because I was scared.
Yeah, it was different. If you're thinking about you're in a nice cabin in the woods. This is 36,000 times that.
Yeah.
You got an amazing cabin.
The lodge is
in
nice.
a huge woods. And this woods is
the real woods. I think you feel you can fight a bear. But.
Yeah, so we saw apes and we saw zebras when we woke up for breakfast, and we saw pretty much all the animals in Lion King, like I said. So,
in Lion King?
So that was a really good trip. And that around this time, this is when I'm kind of getting caught up on sleep, and I'm understanding, okay, my cycle is getting a little bit better. And I was just literally in the pool, and I'm like checking emails, and I'm like, we're really running our business from Africa.
Yeah. I mean, we were speaking with our, operations managers and VAs and things like that in between. Obviously, there is a lapse at some point where we can spend maybe 2-3 hours that we're both up that we can chat. But it was more of like a check-in. they didn't really, especially for the cleaning business, didn't really have any questions for us or anything like that we needed to step in on. It was just more of like, everything okay over there? All right, cool.
And we prepped our teams before we left too. We told them that, the time, and that makes me wonder, how do people operate on U.S. time when they're, because it was so hard, because those couple hours we had together, it's like, all right, I got to tell you everything.
Everything got to get,
and you got to ask all your questions during that time. But then after that, it's like, okay, I'm going to bed. So when I was like on social media and I was on Instagram and I'm kind of posting stories, and I'm like at 6 a.m. over here, they were going to bed. Mm-hmm. They were going to bed over there. So it's like midnight over there. So when they're waking up, it's like, all right, I'm already at the tail end of my day.
Yeah.
It's like noon, and then you're just getting up. So those were the challenges. But I recognize that us having a team and letting them know and making sure they have the structure before we left.
And trusting that they can handle it is another part.
That's probably the biggest thing. Mm-hmm. Like making sure you trust your team that they're going to get the job done, that they understand it. And if there is something that comes up, it's like, okay, I only have these amount of hours to get to the hard zogs. So let me make it count versus just sending them every single thing.
Yeah.
So I don't think our team
they didn't need us.
They didn't need us at all. Mm-hmm. So we were able to run. And if you guys want to know more about that, tap into cleaningbusinessuniversity.com, where we could teach you how to start and scale a remote cleaning business without cleaning any houses. And if we got any master classes coming up, you go to Cleaning Business Masterclass, and we give you over an hour and a half full of game. And we got tons and tons of episodes about the cleaning business, how we run it, the structure on our podcast here.
After the lodge, we flew to Cape Town, which is a whole different vibe from Johannesburg. We actually had met some people at the lodge that were in Cape Town before, and they're like, you're going to really like it, which I did. I did like Cape Town more than Johannesburg, but I couldn't tell you why. It just felt different. Now in Cape Town, I would say we saw a lot more white people than we did in Johannesburg.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I don't know if they reside more there. I have no idea. I don't have those stats, but we did see more of that there. We did all the things there: Table Mountain, Penguins, Cape Point. Actually, we didn't do Table Mountain itself because it was too windy, which is one of the 7 wonders of the world, where you go all the way up with a cable car and kind of see. We didn't do it was too windy, but we did do a helicopter ride, which showed us the same thing.
Equally as windy.
Equally as windy, and kind of showed us the same thing, which was with Alani on the plane as well. She was around for everything, by the way, people.
I didn't know there were penguins in Africa.
A lot of people say so. That's what makes it an attraction, because penguins are usually in cold places, and it's like 70 degrees and they're on the beach. So that was
very different to see.
Yeah, that was an attraction that we went to. And then we did Robben Island. So Robben Island is where Nelson Mandela spent 17 years out of his 27 years of being imprisoned. So we did that tour there, and that was really good because they had someone that was actually in prison with him. They weren't cellmates, but he was there with him. And he actually lives on the island now too, and does tours on Robben Island. So highly recommend that. You have to take like a 30-minute boat to get there. But that was another very empowering, historic conversation and knowledge that I wouldn't say that I knew details of, that shed light on a lot of information. So I think that's a must-do in Cape Town.
Yeah, I want to spend a couple minutes on that because there was so much information that we didn't know. And this is not our time to give you the history lesson, but this is our time to give you our perspective of the journey while we were there. So Robben Island, it was a place where the settlers where people colonized Africa and pretty much imprisoned them on this island, starting in like the 1500s. It sounds like a history lesson. I'm just
1800s, 1500s, yeah.
It started in the 1500s, where people were literally coming over, and kings and queens, they were banishing them to this island once they found out, all right, Africa has so many natural resources. People were colonizing it, people being, people. And they were banishing kings and queens to those islands because that's the easiest way to take down an empire. You send your leaders there. So over time, it became an imprisonment of African Americans going back as far as that. Now, obviously, Nelson Mandela around that time was a completely different environment. But what we learned while we were there was the apartheid. The apartheid was pretty much their version of slavery, in a way. But the difference was we were brought here to the United States. they were born there and being enslaved in their own countries, their own continent. That was the biggest difference. And when they were like, them being South Africans, like, no, this ain't cool. We ain't doing this no more. That's when the whole political movement and political arrest thing was kind of born. So they were banishing people who were kind of
a lot of political prisoners were sent there, essentially. So anytime if you had too much to say or if you basically was leading a pack, they're like, no, ma'am. And they were sending you off to Robben Island. So they spoke about their experience. I mean, like any jail. I don't hear any jail say they had a good experience.
But the difference was that these people, so when you go to jail here, you know you're going to jail. When they went to jail, they was like, oh, we're just political protesters. Yeah. They said, this is going to be a quick thing. So Nelson Mandela went to jail not knowing he would be there for, was it 27 years?
He was at that location for 17, but total of 27. Yeah.
So he went to Robben Island for 17 years. He did not know that he was going there for 17 years. Yeah. So these people who went to jail, they was like, we're going to go to jail for the reason and the cause, but we didn't know that we would be there for decades. Yeah. Because these are non-criminal offenses. Mm-hmm. They're not killing people. They're not robbing people. These are just political protests. Mm-hmm. So imagine Black Lives Matter. You're going to jail for 27 years. People who were protesting for Black Lives Matter, they didn't think that they were going to, if they knew they were going to jail, they knew it wasn't going to be for longer than a couple weeks, couple months, maybe a year. But we're talking 27 years.
Yeah. And that was another, he told the story, another way that they kind of like fought back for what they wanted. They weren't getting the same food as other people, and where they were sleeping wasn't good enough. And so they kind of fought back and said, we need more, which is like, I mean, I've seen, you've seen that in jails, but good for you for being able to kind of do that and coming together and doing all those things. So it was a really good experience. We got a good balance of knowledge and information and history. We ate at lovely restaurants, had a good time. Alani still was able to enjoy her time at seeing different animals and doing different things. So it was a really good experience. This was our second time in Africa, technically. The first time we went to Morocco. And so now we've been to South Africa. Now, does that mean you'll go to Ghana now?
Yeah, I would definitely. I would say like Africa is one of those places as a Black person that you got to visit. I know people say, "Oh, you got to visit Africa," and because they've been there, and I guess I can say that now because I've been there. But
yeah, it was
I think being in that environment around people who look like you, sound like you, is just enlightening. Seeing all the people just coming together and just helping each other out, and even as a African American, sometimes we feel like you go there and they might look down to you because you're from America, so we think we're better than everyone. Not just African Americans. Americans think we're better than everyone in the world, which is a good and a bad thing. It's okay to be confident.
It's not a good and bad. You know what's
but it's not okay to be arrogant or cocky.
How much languages do these people speak? Everywhere you go, everybody speaks multiple languages.
Yeah.
And they have 11 languages in South Africa, and they say most people know 9 of them. I'm like, what are we doing over here?
We were treated as if we were family, as if we were from there, as if we lived there our whole lives. And people say that all the time, like you got to visit Africa to kind of feel that. But I know sometimes we even say, oh, they might treat us differently. They didn't treat us differently from a hole in the wall. It was like, yo, y'all family, y'all good here. Y'all got to come back. Here's some other places you guys should go. Ghana, Zimbabwe. Where else?
Yeah, Kenya.
Kenya was another big one. So Zanzibar. Those are definitely, this trip was definitely worth the flight, the effort, the money. And if you could go, I'd highly recommend it. Now I want to know what tribe I'm from. I need to know what tribe I'm from because they can say, yo, you got to figure that out. You
don't say I'm not from a tribe because of my skin.
Who, you?
That's what you said.
Because I'm like, the thing is, I was trying to see who you looked like.
Oh, so and you saw yourself in other people?
I saw myself in other people. I saw yourself. Remember the lady on the stage? I was like, that's your tribe member right there.
Because she was lighter.
She was lighter.
Oh, God.
But she had similar features to you.
Okay.
So definitely got to know our tribe, man. If y'all got any recommendations on how we can find out what tribe we're
Knowing
from.
our tribe, and then whenever we travel back, we want to be able to afford a lie flat when we travel back. That's
Listen, can we talk about levels of money for 1 second?
Because
so we ran into somebody.
That ticket wasn't $4,000. Originally it was like $8,000.
We ran into somebody on the flight, right? And we knew them. They're pretty popular. Mm-hmm. The difference when it comes to levels of money.
There's like 4 of them.
So if your entire family can afford lay flat seats, your money is different. We're not talking. These kids aren't old. These kids don't even deserve lay flat seats. So that means that you have a level of income that your kids that don't deserve lay flat seats.
Why don't they deserve it, hater?
Because these little kids know I needed that lay flat seat. So there are levels, and that's another thing too. Like I would love to get to the point where, you know, we're flying and we always got the lay flat seats. And that's not the thing, is not buying the lay flat seats, because you could buy it. But I don't want to have to buy it and think about it. Like if you're buying your whole family lay flat seats,
how much is that again?
yeah, if you're buying your whole family lay flat seats and you don't think about it, that's the type of level, that's the type of income levels I would love to get. Not even just the income, the comfort levels, because I wouldn't mind flying to Africa if I had 16 hours on the lay flat.
Yeah, it's a whole different experience.
It's a whole different, and we've done lay flats to Europe,
to London. That was our first and only time. So
but there was only 2 of us. So when you could do it for a kid that's 2 years old that don't even deserve the lay flat seat, and they don't even know they're gonna be on your lap the whole time, so that seat is going to go to waste. That's a different level of income and comfort that I would love to get to.
But that was our trip. I am supposed to be doing a vlog and putting that up sometime. Now that's just another story.
Can y'all hold her accountable to that?
That's just literally another story with these vloggers. And I understand like some of my girls that I follow and why they be like, all right, the vlog is finally up a month and a half, 2 months later after they traveled, because baby, putting all that footage together, it's just a lot. 2 weeks of footage. I'm just saying.
Can y'all keep her accountable to that? Because she's going to say, we're still missing a vlog to
that was completed,
Panama
that I didn't put up. It was a completed vlog.
Is that Panama?
It's Panama.
We didn't even have that. That was a year ago.
Well, anybody gotta know we went in January and September. It could be any time. You just don't know.
Listen, y'all, we appreciate y'all tuning in to another episode of the More Than a Side Hustle podcast.
Yes. What was I gonna say?
If you could like, subscribe. Also, if you could share this episode with one person, that's how we're able to grow. That's how we're able to impact and create a larger impact on our communities and our people, man. So appreciate y'all being here.
Thank you again.
Peace.
See you next week.